Hello, class, and welcome to Lecture 4 on Mise en scène. This is Part 2, Lighting. And here we have a rather evocatively lit scene from Dreamgirls from 2006, and I think you can see how responsible lighting is here for the effect of this image. And that is because much of the impact of an image does come from its manipulation of lighting. And it's pretty obvious if we think about it, because without light, there's no image. And we've probably all experienced this as photographers ourselves, trying to take a shot, even if it's just on our phone, in very low lighting, or the wrong kind of lighting, or perhaps really overexposed lighting, right? So the manipulation of lighting is a big part of the effect of cinema, including in, maybe especially even in film noir, which depends for its effect on very high contrast lighting, as you can see in the still here from the third May. So in cinema, lighting is more than just illumination that permits us to see the action, right? Filmmakers don't just randomly sort of turn the lights on and let the actors do their bits underneath it. No, they're using light to create composition. Lighter and darker areas within the frame help create the overall composition of each shot, and thus guide our attention to certain objects and actions. And so in this shot here, as Megan Fox walks into the garage, the overexposed lighting to her left and behind her indicates off-screen space, right, that she's coming from outside. So the lighting here is important to give us information about what's happening in the story. Of course, light and shadow interplay, and there are two basic types of shadows. Attached shadows, and those occur when light fails to illuminate part of an object because of the object's shape or surface features. And then a cast shadow is projected shadow from a light source. So in our example here of an attached shadow, you can see that shadows are created when light fails to illuminate parts of objects. So for example, underneath the brim of Diane Kruger's hat, right? Where her hair is very dark. That's a shadow. Or there's no light on the left side of Michael Fassbender's body, right? Because the light's coming from behind him. So that creates a shadow. So these lights are very, very strategically placed to create these effects. It's one of the reasons why it takes so long to set up shots, because the lighting has to be done just right, and that can be especially difficult shooting outdoors when you have to depend on natural light, which is why even people shooting outdoors use artificial lighting along with the natural light to help create the lighting situation that they want. And then here is an example of a cast shadow, right, where the light projecting onto the object then creates a shadow that is cast on the left side here onto the face of our actor, and then on the right side onto the wall behind our actor. So what are some features of film lighting? Well, we have the quality of lighting, the direction of lighting, the source of lighting, and color. And we'll look at all those in a second. I do put John Wick, Parabellum here because the lighting in these movies is pretty amazing, especially in the second and third films. There's a lot of artistically rendered lighting effects, which they make the movies very evocative experiences, I think. So what about the quality of lighting? Well, lighting quality refers to the relative intensity of illumination, and that's either hard or soft, right? And hard lighting creates clearly detailed and defined shadows, crisp textures, and sharp edges, where soft lighting creates a sort of diffused illumination, right? So I think we have sort of a mixture here in this shot from us. It's sort of diffuse lighting around her, and going back up the stairs there, but then the sort of hard edges of her body and her face and the prop she's holding. So different lighting effects here create the effect of the image, which is to have her sort of pop out of the background, right? Our eyes really go to the figure here as opposed to the background. And as I said, hard lighting creates clearly defined shadows, crisp textures, and sharp edges, and you can see that here. Black and white photography uses a lot of hard lighting, right? It doesn't have color to depend on to sort of separate hues, right? And so it's important to define images from one another. Soft lighting creates a diffused illumination, right? Light sort of diffused across the image, dispersed. And you can see that in the shot from her here. And he's on the beach, right? And so when we're on a beach, the sun's very bright. We don't see everything very clearly because it's so bright. And the effect of that is being rendered here with the soft lighting. Direction of lighting is important, right? And that just refers to the path of light from its source or sources to the object lit. So where's the light coming from in the scene, and how is that important? So in this shot from Star Trek VI, the light is coming from above them, right? And it indicates some kind of malevolent presence that's threatening them. And directions light can come from. Front, right? We have frontal lighting, which can be recognized by its tendency to eliminate shadows. Backlighting, which comes from behind the subject filmed, as we saw in the shot from Glorious Bastards. Underlighting comes from below the subject, and top lighting, as we saw in the Star Trek VI shot, comes almost directly down. And you can see those examples here. Top lighting on the right, really shines on the face and the forehead of our actor. Underlighting here in The Sixth Sense gives us that kind of creepy horror effect, right? And then backlighting gives us that shadow effect in the foreground. So what are some lighting sources? Well, available light we talked about, right? From location. A lot of documentaries use available light because they're trying to create a sense of realism, right? So when they go out on location to capture whatever they're trying to capture, they're not dragging along a whole bunch of extra lights to get the effect, because they want the effect to seem like it's happening in real time right there, that it's not artificial or contrived. But most fiction films use extra light sources, as I talked about, to more completely control the look of the image. The filmmaker will usually strive to create a lighting design that is consistent with the sources in the setting, right? That amplifies what's there rather than tries to contradict it, for example. And most scenes require two light sources, and you know this if you've shot anything yourself. So a key light is the primary source, and that provides dominant illumination and casts the strongest shadows. But then you'll also have a fill light, and that's a less intense illumination that fills in, softens, or eliminates shadows cast by the key light. So as we looked at in that shot from us, right, the combination creates the effect. And three-point lighting, it developed in classical Hollywood filmmaking and uses three light sources: the key light, the fill light, and the backlight. So let us watch a short tutorial about how those sources work in three-point lighting.
In this lesson of Frame Forest Film School, we're going to show you how to use 3 simple lights to do a 3-point lighting setup. So if you want to light a headshot or maybe an interview, this is going to show you some of the basic lighting principles to make your shots look better. In 3-point lighting, there are 3 lights: a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. In this video, we will also show you some tips on adding more life to the background. Well, let's get started. Here we have our talent in front of a black background in the studio. We are going to start off by turning off our lights in the ceiling. Then we're going to turn on our first light, the key light. The key light is a 650 watt tungsten lamp with a diffusion gel to make the light softer. The key light is the strongest light in the setup and is our main light source. The key light is placed at the side of the camera in a 20 to 45 degree angle. The second light is our fill light. The fill light fills in darkness and shadows on the opposite side of the key light and gives much more even lighting. The fill light is normally only up to 50% as powerful as the key light. You can achieve this by using a less powerful light, move the light further away from the subject, or adding more diffusion gels to it. Here we turn our fill light on and off to demonstrate the effect. The last light in the 3-point lighting setup is the backlight. The backlight is placed behind the talent and creates a kind of halo effect around the edges of the subject. The backlight is separating our talent from the background and is highlighting the contours. Here we turn our backlight on and off to demonstrate the effect. So this is the 3 basic steps in creating 3-point lighting. But in addition to the 3 lights to light your subject, you can also light up the background to it to make the picture even better. So what we're going to do here is add a bright 2 kilowatt tungsten lamp with a colored gel on it to make a splash of color on our black background. So here you can see now we added a little bit of blue color behind her. By using the barn doors on the lamp, we can kind of shape it into a shaft of light, which is a cool effect. Changing the color and shape of the background light, you can create different moods for your scenes. And here we turn our background light on and off to show the improvement to the shot. Let's take a look at some before and after shots. So this was our talent with just a natural room light from the ceiling. And this is after. As you see, 3-point lighting creates much more depth in your shots and creates different moods. I hope you found this video helpful, and thanks for watching.
Excuse me. So that video gives you a pretty good idea of how it's done, and I think kind of underscores the important part, which is that a lot of it's just trial and error, right? I mean, people figure this out just by doing it, and as you shoot films, make your own stuff, moving lights around until you get the effect that you want is sort of key, right? Another kind of lighting you might have heard of is chiaroscuro lighting, which is from the Italian. It just means light dark. Rembrandt was famous for sort of perfecting this in his paintings, the high contrast between light and shadow, right? With these pockets of darkness and light that don't fall quite evenly. And you can see that in this shot from Sin City here too, right? Just provides a very evocative look, gives you a sort of, the high contrast can sort of, represent the duality of good and evil or whatever it is you're trying to portray. Color, obviously, is important. By using filters he placed in front of the light source, the video talked about it, using gels, right? The filmmaker can color the on-screen illumination in any fashion. Color can also be manipulated in cinematography and developing and finishing the film in computers, which is how most films are finished today. But it can also be manipulated right there on the set through your lights. And as I mentioned, so much of this now is done with computers. Even stuff that's shot on a stage with real lights is going to be edited and sort of refined and finished up in computers before the finished film is distributed. And of course, so many films are not only shot digitally now, but they're also distributed digitally. That it's much easier to do all your final editing and your color correcting and all that sort of thing with the computer. Okay, so that is the end of Lecture 4, Part 2, and move on and watch the final part of this lecture on composition.